right, guys. Hi. Welcome to Please Don't Break the Pots, Wisdom from the Retro Game Store. My name is Kelsey Lewin. This is my husband, Cody. And we co-own a game store in Seattle, Washington. Actually, two game stores in Seattle, Washington called Bootleg Games. How many of you guys are here and don't know who we are at all? That's awesome.
Hey, cool.
Sweet. Okay,
Our description didn't show up, so we weren't sure if anyone would just come based on a title.
Yeah, so we're excited to tell you guys about, a couple different things. So first of all, this is our store. I think this is a good panel, even if you don't want to run your own game store. It's just kind of interesting to know what goes on behind the scenes. Interesting to know what goes on behind the scenes here at a game store. You'll probably learn some things. You'll probably hear some funny stories from us. And yeah, anything else I should say before we get started? No?
I don't think so.
Okay. You have to use your words. All right, so our game stores, we have two of them. They've been around for 15 years. We obviously, we're kind of young. We have not owned them for 15 years. We've owned them for about 3.5. We were managers there beforehand and took over 3.5 years ago, and we've done pretty well for ourselves, I would say. So Cody, you want to talk a little bit about what kind of our overall philosophy is here?
Yeah, our overall philosophy with the game store, like retro games is a semi-niche market. I mean, we also sell new stuff as well, but everybody does that. Target does that. Everywhere Online does that. And Everywhere Online also sells the retro games. So we want to provide a interesting experience that you can't get online. When you're looking online at retro games, there's a lot of worries like, okay, are these games going to be fake? Is it going to work? Like, you're just looking through an endless list of games. What games do I want to buy? How do I find new ones?
What's the condition going to be like?
And it's just so spread out and so tough to find everything. So we try to put it all in one and also combine it with like a memorable experience, because realistically, in a lot of instances, you do not need to go to a store. So we want to make a reason for you to spend your time outside of the house, So with that, we have all like the colorful walls, interesting products you've never seen. We carry a ton of stuff imported from Japan, all officially licensed stuff that you're probably never going to see anywhere else, even online sometimes. And yeah, that's what we do, is just try to introduce people to a huge variety and be very welcoming and give you something to remember in our stores.
We also have a mascot. As you can probably see here, we do make plushies of our pink gorilla. I don't necessarily think this is like a must for owning a store in general, but we do try to take a lot of inspiration from how they do it in Japan. And if you've ever been to Japan, they have a mascot for everything. Like literally everything. We have cereal mascots here. They have like post office mascots and like bicycle company mascots. I don't know. Everything has a mascot. So that's sort of where we went with this. Is it's something that, you can put on shirts and make into plushies. So that's a revenue stream, but more than a revenue stream, because I don't know, we don't make a whole lot on shirts or anything. Look, there's people in the audience wearing our shirts right now. They are walking advertisements for us right now. Thank you very much. All right, here's the big thing that I feel like somehow is missed at a lot of game stores I've been to. Clean and test your shit. Why are there game stores that I go to that have stickers all over them, that are dirty, that haven't been tested, that are just sitting on the shelves like in the condition they were given to us in? And
it's even surprising, like I'll go to other stores and want to buy something, and the option to test it isn't even right there and available. They're just like, well, yes, I have found this item. You can buy it from me. I'm essentially a garage sale. It's your guess. It's your job to figure out whether or not it works. And that's kind of a insanely weird thing to me. Like, what is your purpose? You're just like the lucky guy who found it. Our purpose is making sure your stuff works and giving you the option to return it and things like that. So
right. The reason you would go to a game store over just trusting eBay or the internet is because theoretically you can walk in and just have it the same day and have something that works. If you can't even guarantee that someone can do that, why would you go to a game store in the first place? Why would you not just buy everything online? So we do a couple different things. These are some of our tools of the trade here.
High-tech tools.
High-tech tools. That razor blade's really good at removing GameStop stickers. We got Q-tips for cleaning cartridges with isopropyl alcohol, and also Windex, which some people don't agree with, but as long as you dry it, it's not going to hurt anything. And also, the nice thing about Windex as opposed to alcohol is rather than just kind of sanitizing, Windex is actually designed to pick up dirt and remove it. Toothbrushes are really good for getting in the cracks of things. Goo Gone for removing GameStop stickers. And, those are some of the just kind of general cleaning and testing things. But one thing that we do that, again, we stole from Japan, is that they seal things up once they've been verified that they're nice and working. They put them in plastic, and then they go out for sale so that you know that it was tested, it was cleaned, and then no more dirt is getting in. So you can sort of see this photo here. It's not very large, but we have some of our games hanging on the wall here. All of these are in plastic. They've already been cleaned and tested. Nothing else is going to come into them.
The other nice benefit of the plastic way that we display them is like a lot of other places I've been, you kind of have this like a fortress of glass cases. Like that'll be the game stores, just like you got all the employees hiding behind glass cases, everything is in a glass case, and that's it. Like it's very hard to see anything, it's very hard to look at it up close. With this method, having them in the poly bags, you can like look at every side of them, you can grab it, it's like inches away from your face, and also you don't have to put any stickers on your games because they are now on the outside on the plastic bag instead of on the game at all. So no cleanup, you just pull it out and it's good to go.
Yeah, it's also, kind of like you were saying, it's very easy on the eyes to scan. Sometimes game stores will like stack them on the spines, which, it works, but a lot of times people don't really remember exactly what the title they're looking for is, and maybe they just kind of remember the cover art, and this helps with that too, and discoverability of new stuff as well. And then the other thing, you want to talk about the batteries that we do.
Oh yeah, one last thing we do there's so much that goes into getting out a game, and like that sounds stupid, but there really is a lot of process for each one. Another thing is we have to check to make sure every single one that uses a save battery gets a brand new save battery. Even if the battery works, we replace it because who knows when that thing's going to go out. So if you don't know about save batteries, old games like your old Pokemon games, they actually used a battery inside to remember where you were when you turned off the game. So if that battery dies, all of your Pokemon and all of your childhood memories die as well. So you need to replace that battery if you want to play it again. Those batteries last about 10 years or so. So, if you buy one from us, it's good for a very long time.
All right, this is another thing I see a lot of other game stores doing. And this isn't supposed to be shame other game store hour or anything. It's just kind of what we've done to set ourselves apart from others. And I think it's given us kind of a reputation for quality here. So bootlegs, reproductions, homebrew, there's a lot of different definitions of, first of all, on the moral scale, I think most people would probably agree that a straight-up bootleg is probably a not okay thing to sell. Sometimes like homebrew games are a little bit more gray area. It's something like this Brutal Mario World right here. Like this is a hack of a game. So it's not something you could be giving Nintendo money for, but maybe you still want to play it. You might have also seen some really crappy, I see these horrible Pokemon tiny figures as so many other places, and they're like
plushes.
Yeah, they're like free for $1 or whatever. Yeah. We just stay away from all of that, and I don't think there's anything like I said. I don't think there's anything wrong with selling homebrew games morally, but it's kind of a gray market area, and you tend to turn off some people who are very, concerned that you're going to be doing things by the books and not selling them an actual bootleg. I think it's kind of like dipping your toes into the bootleg area.
Exactly. It's just kind of like a cumulative effect on like the entire look of your store. You want everything to be straight up legit, as fun as Brutal Mario is or whatever other homebrew game. And I wish we could sell them because they're awesome. There's tons of that one you couldn't because like they're using other people's assets. But say you have a completely wholly original game, it's just we don't even sell those even if they are legal. But it just kind of has like a cumulative effect of like, oh, what the hell is that? Oh, did they sell fake games also here? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, part of it's definitely perception. Like, there have been legitimate re-releases of some games onto console. Like even Capcom re-released some stuff onto cartridges somewhat recently, but people don't always perceive it that way because collectors aren't most of your market. Most of your market is just kind of your average person. If they see something that looks obviously wrong, it can kind of hurt the overall, perception of your store. So don't sell things like that intentionally or unintentionally. Someone sent me this photo of a game store that was unintentionally selling this bootleg copy of Pokemon Ruby. There's a lot of ways. I'm not going to go into the whole thing in this panel today, but there's a lot of good guides online for distinguishing between legitimate games and reproduction and bootleg games.
And it's really easy to catch them. Like, again, not to go into it, but it's very simple, and I don't really buy the excuse of like, oh, I didn't know, because it's so simple. Open it up. You don't need to go through a guide online like you're describing to be like, oh, well, this looks off, this looks off, this looks off. Open it, and you instantly see. The guys making these fake ones are trying to trick the mom who's buying it for their kids, or just average Joe who doesn't care and just wants to play the game. They're not trying to trick game stores. So open it up. What do you know? It's fake. They don't even try on the inside.
Yeah, and the reason, of course, that people make and sell these bootleg games is because Pokemon Ruby is a sought-after game. It's a popular game. Probably sells for like $30-ish for a legitimate one. And you can manufacture these for like, I don't know, probably 75 cents to $1. So it makes a lot of sense for people to, there's a lot of margin to be made on something like that. But we'll get into later, you don't want to tank your reputation over a couple of high margin items like that. Yeah, actually, we're getting into that right now. Honesty is the best policy. Even if you can get away with it, even if you can definitely get away with it, you never know. So, we pay everyone fairly, and I say that because you have people who come into the store with a bag of stuff they have, it's been sitting in their attic, they have no idea what it's worth, and sometimes it's worth a lot of money, and it's like, an old lady or something who you could very clearly be like, yeah, $20, whatever, and make a couple $100 on this thing, and you'd probably never see her again. Cody, you want to tell our fun story that everyone likes to hear about?
Oh, the Nintendo World Championship
Yeah,
story.
How many of you guys know what the Nintendo World Championship cartridge is? Okay, most of you. For anyone who doesn't know what it is, it's a competition cartridge. There's very few of them out there in the world. It's a very expensive collector's item. That's pretty much all you need to know.
Yeah, so one day, it's just sitting in the store, minding my own business. In comes a bag of very, very, very boring NES games, like Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, other game show games, and football games, like games that all sell for $5 and less. And I'm just going through it, and then all the way at the very bottom of the bag, like 20 games in, we find all the way at the bottom, Nintendo World Championships. And I thought...
Which does not happen, by
No,
the way.
never. There's like, how many have been found?
70-ish, I think.
Yeah, there's not a lot out there. And I look it up first I asked the guy if he's like messing with me or anything, and he's not. He legitimately did not know what it was at all. I'm just like, are you? So I guess you're also not aware. This game goes for thousands of dollars. He's like, oh. I'm like, yeah, I'll need a minute. I'll get back to you in a second, sir. So I go to look it up. This one's never been discovered. There's people online who track where all of them are and like vaguely where they've sold and what they've sold for.
There's a serial number on all of them.
Oh, yes, that's right. So we had 303 or something like that. One of the higher numbers. And yeah, I go through looking it up and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so hard to tell what they sell for. So many of them are private. So many people want to keep the numbers private on what they sell them for. But I kind of figured out I could probably sell it for like $15,000 to $20,000, somewhere in between there. So I brought it over to the guy and told him like, hey man, look, you could sell this for like 15 or 20. Obviously there's a little bit of risk there because that's a big stack of money. I can give you 13 right now, and you can just be on $13,000, and you could just be on your way. And I could tell he was like kind of shocked. I was too. It kind of seemed fake, like a dream more so. Like it's just very weird. And he's just like, yeah, okay, I'll take that. His girlfriend. His girlfriend's freaking out, but he's just like, okay, that sounds fair. Let's do this. So he takes like a pretty life-altering amount of money and just is out the door. And the point of this slide is that I very easily could have paid them all nothing for that. Like, he didn't want anything for the games. I probably could have gave him 20 for all of the games. First off, that's wrong, but I'm trying to get to the point where you're the kind of person who would do that, so I'm skipping right over that. Forget about it being wrong. Think about your reputation of your store. If that ever got out, first off, you need to sell the thing, so people are going to wonder where that came from. What's the story behind it?
For an item like this that has a serial number and a bunch of people who are always trying to find them, this isn't something that's always for sale. It's something where people, collectors are kind of waiting in the wings, waiting for the next one to pop. So there was no scenario where you could quietly get rid of this thing. It would have gotten out.
Yeah. So you got to think, what is your store worth? Like us, we're trying to build something that goes on for a long time and has gone on for a long time. So say making $13,000 straight, or 20 or 30 or whatever straight profit and paying nothing for it, sure, that's nice once, but I mean, our store makes a lot more than that in a year. Do we just want to cut off that funding? Because that's what you're going to do if anyone finds out that you're ripping people off.
Yeah, we were the top story on IGN that week.
My friend's mom in Puerto Rico reached out to him because she heard about it. I'm like, how the hell is she hearing? How is this international news? That's insane.
Puerto Rico's not international.
I guess technically it's not. Excuse me.
It's still
not.
Though.
Sorry. But how are people hearing about this in different languages all over the world? That's so bizarre to me. It didn't seem like a small story, but it really spread, and it spread a good reputation for our store, for sure.
Yeah, I think, the alternative is that all of these places would have been reporting on it, and us keeping tight-lipped because we had been a jerk or something would have painted a very, very, very different picture. And so, yeah, I mean, you never really know what's going to come out of a sale. And when I go back to the don't take your reputation over a couple $100, which is, the less severe, that's kind of like the Nintendo World Championship story is like the maximum version of that story. That's the most extreme.
Yeah, so if you take a smaller story, is that what you're going to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, like a smaller story of let's say you ripped off a grandma. She had a bunch of GameCube games that I'm sure her son had or something. She goes to sell those to a store, and her son finds out that you gave grandma $20 for all these super GameCube's very popular right now. The average price of a good game is $20 to $50 for the good ones, If you only gave her 20 for say a big stack of that, son finds out, he's pissed off.
He's gonna tell all of his friends, it's gonna be,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can really hurt your reputation even if you don't think you can, so we're skipping all of the also, morally, you probably shouldn't be a jerk. But even if you are a jerk, I'm just speaking from a pure self-interest thing right here. If all you care about is your self-interest, yes. You still should be honest. The other thing that's kind of weird about our store is we sell some stuff that doesn't really belong in a game store. So know your market. If you're in a high school town, it's going to look very different than a college town versus a big city versus a tourist spot. What's the industry like in your area? We're in Seattle. Tech jobs tend to bring in a very specific kind of person, which is nerds like all of us. We have college kids at our University District store campus and then our University District location, and we also have kind of a touristy area in our Chinatown location. So we kind of cater to both of those. These are little keychains that we sell. They're imported from Japan, and they're we sell $4 to $6 keychains like this that don't really look like they belong in a game store at all, but we're sort of hitting that cutesy import market as well, especially with the college kids and stuff. They tend to like just little knickknacks, something to put on their backpack or whatever. And these specifically, these bubble tea drinks, because we have 6 or 7 bubble tea places.
Oh yeah, just on the street. Yeah, it's on the one street.
These have been very, very popular for us. So for customer service, I don't want to prattle on about you should be good to your customers and greet them, be friendly, whatever. I think one of the more something that may not be as obvious is that people have varying levels of the same interest. You're going to have 10 different people who come in for a Nintendo 64 and a couple games, but there are going to be very, very different needs for each of those people. Some of them are just going to want the 1 or 2 games from their childhood. They just want to pick it up and go. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have someone who might want to be, getting the absolute best performance out of the Nintendo 64, the best picture, the best audio. So you need to sort of understand the difference between those two people and know when to shut up and give them what they want instead of overwhelming them with options.
Yeah, and people get too many options on anything. It gets hard to decide on anything, and they just want to leave. It just feels like kind of overwhelming in your brain. You're just like, all right, whatever I have, that's what I want. Don't try to add anything else. And it's not necessarily an upsell that we do, but more of just trying to get them ready to go, happy, and come back to buy more games. So what I say by keeping it simple, don't overwhelm them. Here we have 2 options of getting your GameCube to connect to your HD TV. Nowadays HD TVs don't have the composite, the yellow, red, and white cables anymore. So your only way to get it through there is like an HDMI converter. Well, there's actually tons of options, but what I say is based on kind of the vibe I get from the person and what they're telling me, I'll try to keep it simple. So I'm like, hey, look, we have this thing on the left, $15, it'll get the picture on your TV. It's not going to make it look any better, but it'll get the job done. And they go, all right, awesome. That's simple. I understand that. Or if they really want to get into GameCube stuff, I'll be like, hey, we have this like amazing HDMI connector thing. It's like $150, so I don't know if you want to get into that, but it'll make your picture look as good as it's going to get. So if you've got a guy who's just coming in who's like, oh yeah, I want to play Mario Sunshine. I played that a lot growing up. That's all I want to do. I just really want to play that. I'm like, cool. I'm not going to present him with the $150 option because it's very intimidating, and there's also a few options in between there. You don't need to throw all that at them. Just be like, hey, here's the $15 one. That'll get the job done. You want that, right? Easy. So keep it moving.
Yeah. Here are some of your customers that you might meet here. The first one is a guy I actually really like a lot. He's probably a parent. They're probably going to stick with just one console they have, not in a snobbish way. They think the PS2 is the best console ever, but they're not talking down to you. They're going to stick with that one. That's what they know. They know a lot about it.
They're so fun to talk to because they'll be like, they'll tell you some like very obscure PS2 game and go into like how much they liked it. I'm like, I've never even heard of this game before. I've never heard of anyone talk about this before, but you like love it so much. This is great to learn from,
And then they'll also ask you for recommendations, and I'm like, oh man, you're the expert. You have my childhood guy. I love this guy who buys mostly, first-party Nintendo games, says he should have never sold his old games, uses the word nostalgia a lot, and always has one extremely random game from their childhood that they're like overly attached to. They're like, oh my God, Glover! That was the best! Was it? And then you have the snob, this idiot here. They're not your customer for the most part. They're a very infrequent shopper. They're going to ask for an obscure game, probably just to flex, not because they're even really looking for it. They're going to ask, they're not going to buy anything without examining it closely and looking at the corners. Does it have the manual? And they probably won't shut up about whatever they're collecting right now. In my case, it's like the Wonder Swan or I don't know, something obscure and something you probably don't care about hearing about.
And those, the collectors kind, like the hardcore collector guys, the reason Kelsey says they're not like super your customers just because, they've kind of already got everything. They're only looking for like those hidden gems, like the really, really big hitter things or graded stuff, which is something we don't really deal in.
Yeah.
And I only know one store that actually deals with the graded stuff on like a big scale because
and
it is
he mostly sells them online.
Yeah, so. Because it is just such a very, very precise market, and it's very hard to deal with.
And your final person is everyone else. They just like video games. They're probably into, I don't know, maybe they're into sports games, maybe they're into racing games, RPGs, who knows. They just want their video games at a good price. They're at least 80% of your market. So that's where you should be focusing your time. That's why we clean and test things. That's why we make things presentable, is for those 80% of people, and not trying to focus so much on appeasing all of the collectors. Not that we're screwing them or anything, but they're not your primary market. They're going to be there to buy your heavy hitters, and that's pretty much it. So I say that to illustrate the point, because I think a lot of people get into owning a game store because they are collectors, and they've probably spent a lot of time around other collectors, and especially going to, what are the conventions you guys have out here, like Too Many Games and some of those. So those, I mean, that's mostly these guys and maybe a little bit of this guy at those conventions. And that's really like, they live at those conventions. They don't live at the game store as much. Here's something that I think a lot of people might be surprised by. Cody, why don't you talk about this?
So it might surprise people to find, it surprised a lot of people, because we probably get like at least 3 to 5 messages a day asking if we sell online. We kind of don't. A little bit we do, but mostly we do not. And that was a real life experiment that we learned when we had our Bellevue store back in the day. The Bellevue store we opened up, and this was also going to be the opening of our first online store. Bellevue store opens, it's doing amazing actually, considering it was a store that opened like, its first year was almost as good as the other stores, which is great for a store that's basically not been around. People are still discovering it. And then we decided to open an online store, pinkgorillagames.com, that also had everything in the Bellevue store sold online, which was great at first because it was like, wow, we're selling a lot of things.
Things would sell instantly.
Instantaneously.
You wouldn't have to even put things out for sale sometimes.
You'd have a wish list function. So for example, Super Metroid would go in and it would email out to like 50 or so people who put that on their wish list, and then it would sell in like a couple seconds. So that's great, but Super Metroid was already a game that was very easy to sell. So now you have a scenario where you've got a physical retail location, you have people coming in expecting to see good things, but they never see good things because all of those things have sold online. You're also taking these very popular games like that out of kind of your local economy. A lot of games that we sell, we'll sell to a guy who will trade it back to us eventually. So it kind of keeps it in the neighborhood a little bit. I mean, who knows, that guy could go move or sell it online himself, but in general, it's nice to keep it close. So actually, selling online totally killed that store. What was once like a really good store was doing awesome. Traffic just plummeted. I remember having days for like the in-store sale would be like $3, which is just unheard of. That's crazy. So yeah, just selling online, that store just totally killed it. And once we had nothing, like none of those games that people wanted anymore, people stopped bringing in games to sell to us. So not only did we just like cut off our in-store sales, but we cut off our supply. Because I can't go down to wherever, the retro game emporium, and pick up more copies of Super Metroid. I got to get them because they're like in people's attics, they're in people's collections. So we had no more games and no one to sell to. It's terrible.
Yeah, your local customers are your most important customers. You can definitely sell things online, and we have, but in general we try to avoid it, especially with the really popular stuff, and give it weeks at least to sit in the store to sell to our local guys, because yeah, would you go into a retro game store that never had any good games in it? If it was all just, this isn't a photo of the Bellevue store, but this looks very, very similar to what it looked like at the end, where there's just like nothing for sale. It doesn't look good. Why would you want to take time out of your day to drive somewhere where the selection's so poor? And the other thing that's kind of like, something only your local customers do is people online, like Cody was saying, they just got that email saying that Super Metroid's in stock. They bought it instantly. They're not browsing. They're not also picking up anything else. A lot of times your local customers, maybe they come in and they're looking for something specific, and maybe they do pick it up, maybe they don't, but oftentimes they'll add something else to their purchase. Maybe it's just a pack of cards, but hey, you didn't sell that pack of cards if you were selling them online. Or maybe they're just like, oh my gosh, this is like a really weird, cool looking $8 game. I'll try it, I don't know. And that kind of stuff doesn't sell online because it's not discoverable, because it's not like a known hidden gem or whatever. You're not just browsing the covers typically when you're looking online. So, yeah, it was a big failure for us, and don't repeat our mistake. Sort of in that same vein, gimmicks won't fix your problems. The one promotion that we do constantly is if you wear our shirts, you get a discount in the store. You just got to wear it into the store. So it kind of, like I mentioned earlier, it serves a dual purpose because you're a walking billboard for us. But mostly, we just don't want to have to deal with things like point cards or rewards or loyalty programs because those things get complicated. And, I know there's a poke place I go to eat next door very often, and they have a rewards program, and I swear they forget to add my points like half the time, and I should have like 3 more free poke bowls by now. So I don't want to deal with that kind of thing. And of course, if you run sales all the time, people are just going to wait for the sales, and you're not going to sell anything for the margins that you should probably be selling your things for.
Yeah, and with point cards, like, I don't know, I personally feel, I might be a weirdo, but I feel very overwhelmed by people asking every time I try to check out what my phone number is or what my email is or download this app, those kind of things. There's just too much of it out there, and we're trying to, again, provide a comfortable experience where you aren't constantly getting the same thing.
Yeah,
you want to buy a game?
There's a reason that people don't like the GameStop whole spiel they do.
Yeah,
5 questions they have for you.
You can just give us a game and buy it and leave. It's very easy. You don't have any more questions.
The last thing is that physical media is not forever. It's not just probably not forever. It's not forever. At some point, this is probably going to end, and then 20 years after that, when the nostalgia dies down, we got to find something else to do. But the good news is that video games themselves and fandom is forever. People aren't going to stop liking the things they like. Pokemon's probably never going to fall entirely out of favor. I don't know. I'm making a prediction. That's that's not a fair thing to say as a fact. But there's always going to be something that you can sell merchandise of. There's probably always going to be like card games and other things. So, diversify and don't only cater to those collectors because it's just not a sustainable thing forever. For you guys, if you're not running a game store but you shop at them, you should get on your local game store's good side, and we can tell you how. So come in often, just so we remember your face. It's not like you don't have to buy things all the time. Buy things occasionally, even if it's just a pack of cards or maybe you need to add this $5 game to your collection, whatever. The thing that really works for me for remembering people is if you become the something guy. Like we have a regular customer who comes in and he's trying to collect all of the Nintendo 64 cartridges that come in a different color, like a red cartridge or a black cartridge or whatever. So I see that guy and I'm like, oh, I just got in a Bassmaster 2000, and here you go. I know you're looking for that one. Do you have that one yet? If you become sort of known for something and just kind of mention it every once in a while, we'll do things like that. We'll show you something first before it's out for sale. We might let you know that something cool is about to come in. We might put things on hold for you a little bit longer than we would for other people or give you discounts. So it's good to get on the good side. You have anything to add to that, or?
Not particularly.
Okay. No. And we know you're here for the weird stories, so we'll give you some of those too. Don't break the pots, and don't rope us into your marital affairs. You want to tell this story, Cody?
Yeah, this first one was pretty interesting. It was shortly after Kelsey and I took over the store, and we get a firsthand account of like what you really have to deal with when you're like the main manager, main owner, the kind of small things that just you don't expect. So we get a call from a woman who is asking us how we wrap our cables, For us, just wrap around the hand, rubber band, boom, good to go, when you sell a cable to somebody. So a guy, I guess, was claiming to his wife that we wrapped our cables with a bra strap, because she found a bra strap on the ground, and was calling in to ask, did you guys do this? Did you wrap your cables with the bra strap? And I'm like, well, it's not our official policy to do that, but, crazier things have happened. I don't think so, but
yeah, that was
I think there's no way we did that.
I didn't really know how to touch that one, because, I can't watch every employee ever. Maybe they did wrap something in. I don't know. Don't melt your controllers.
Oh my gosh, I was sitting at the store after hours one day, just minding my own business, and a guy's just banging on the door furiously. I'm like, oh boy, come on, go over to the door, and the guy's freaking out. He's like, please man, I just need a controller, I need an Xbox One controller so bad, I'm sorry, I'll give you $100, I'll give you double what it costs, I just need it. I'm like, dude, no, look, I'm gonna sell it to you if you calm down. If you keep freaking out, you get it for nothing, or you don't get one at all. So just calm down, come on in, it's like an hour after the store closes. And the guy apparently was playing Fortnite, went over to his kitchen to get whatever. I guess his oven was on, and he left his controller on the oven, and the thing had just like melted in half. So he's freaking out, needed a 10 or 11 p.m. controller, and just sold it to him. He was on his way, but...
Don't shop drunk. We have a lot of stories about this.
Yeah. Do you want to tell one? I mean, I can, but... I
think you should probably tell. I mean, there was the guy who a bottle of absinthe fell out of his pocket, and I don't know. You're better at these stories than I am. You probably shouldn't shop drunk.
I mean, do it responsibly. So a guy came in, and he was shirtless and asking for games that didn't exist. He was asking for like Mario on PlayStation and Metal Gear on 64 and things like that. And I'm just like, no, I'm sorry, man. I don't think we have what you're looking for. You should probably get going, because he's very loud and animated. And he starts getting mad at me because I'm kind of he knows I'm trying to usher him out the door. He gets really, really mad at me. I'm like, look, man, you can't be in here with the shirt off, yelling and all, just look at yourself. Like, come on. But so he's putting on his sweatshirt, and out drops like a half bottle of vodka from his sweatshirt. And I was just like, oh, okay. And he sees me notice his bottle of vodka and is offended that I have noticed it. He's like, look, man, it's my day off. Like, I don't need to. You got a problem with this? It's my day off. Come on. So we go all the way outside, and again, I'm just trying to get him out of the store, like it's very embarrassing to have someone freaking out. It's not my fault that someone's freaking out in the store, but it's still embarrassing to me, to everyone around. So we get him out of the store, and he keeps getting like closer and closer and closer to me. It's like he's about to hit me or something. I'm just like, all right, let's see what happens. And it gets really close, and then he kind of like eyeballs me. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to mess with you and your fucking arms. I'm out of here. I was lifting a lot more back then, but...
Yeah, what arms? I'm just kidding. You probably shouldn't try to steal stuff right in front of us and then try to sell it back to us. We did have one fun guy who came in a couple times all of our games are baggied and zip tied to the wall, so they make a lot of noise when you try to rip them down. It's a nice little security measure that's built into that. So when someone rips something off the wall, normally it's just someone who doesn't know that we snip it down for you and it's fine, but you hear that, you go over and you see what's up. In this case, the guy just kind of had it in his pocket, just sticking out. And this actually wasn't me, this was an employee of mine, but he's like, hey man, can I have that back? I don't know what you're talking about. He just kind of reaches into the guy's pocket and takes it back out.
And that same guy, months before, was in the store, and Kelsey was helping like his girlfriend at the register, but he's over at the wall and he rips the game off the wall, and something's not right with him, so he's just kind of like freaking out, like holding the game that he just ripped off our wall, and he's like sort of going to put it in his pocket, and I run over and I grab it from him. I'm like, hey man, just let me know, I'll cut these down for you anytime. He's like, what? Hey man, I wasn't gonna steal that. I was like, oh yeah, I didn't say you were, I was just saying, I'll cut it down for you, so you don't have to rip it off the wall. He comes up to the register, he's just kind of glaring at me the whole time. He's really upset, and he talks to Kelsey. He's like, hey, can I have a piece of paper? And Kelsey passes it over to him. He takes it, and he's just like, he's writing in front of all of us. There's like 4 people there, and he passes the note to Kelsey that he's been writing in front of all of us. It's like, that guy is a jerk. He's really out of it.
Don't try to steal Star Fox. He's nice. Don't steal him. I don't know if you guys can see in this photo. He does have a chain on his foot now. He's on house arrest. Because we used to have him outside as a nice little welcome to the store, come on in, look, we got Fox. And one day a group of teenagers just kind of took him. And he was found, thankfully. We still have him. A nice guy came back later and was like, I found this Star Fox statue. Apparently they had just thrown it in some bushes a few blocks down the street, but Star Fox he's chained down now, so he's safe. These aren't really interesting, but we've had people try to sell us some really interesting things, like purses and golf tees. I don't know, and they usually get really upset when you won't buy them too. Like, it's never the people who are trying to sell you something that actually makes sense. Like, we don't buy PC games, for instance, but most of the time we're just like, oh, we don't buy PC games. People are like, oh, okay, that's fine. It's the people who are trying to sell you golf tees that get really angry that you're not buying the golf tees.
Yeah.
And please don't flash us. That's happened to me a couple times, and it's never fun. Anyways, those are some stories, but I'm sure you can get some more out of us if you ask good questions, because we were just kind of thinking of some on the fly. So if you guys have any questions for us, we kind of got the rest of the time for that. Yeah.
How much of the store that you bought do you have left to go?
Full storage unit. So recently, Cody bought.
Oh, that's right. So a guy asked, how much of the store that we bought do we have to go through? And if you don't know what he's talking about, I recently was on a road trip to visit every retro game store in Washington, Oregon. Along the way, I ended up buying one of those stores, which cut the road trip short. And we spent 2 days in U-Hauls bringing it all back to the store. We still have
most of it.
Yeah.
We had to get a storage unit and throw pretty much all of it in there, and we barely touched the storage unit, so.
It's rough.
Yeah, very little.
It's all because of that earlier slide, clean and test your stuff. This stuff was every disc just massively scratched. And we have a really good, the best resurfacer you can get. But it takes time, 2 or 3 minutes per game, so it's just slow going. And this guy wasn't a bad guy. He was resurfacing the discs as the customer bought them. We do it before, so just reverse. We have a lot of work on our hands.
Hi. Seems like you guys have a really high standard on everything you sell, which I think is really great. But I worked in a game store for a little while, and I have nightmares of going through piles and piles of PS2 games and old systems that don't work half the time and stuff like that, and wrapping cords and all that. How do you keep that going when there's mountains of crap coming through all the time?
The short version is Cody works after hours a lot.
I'll work at least 12 hours a day, sometimes more. But also we have a lot of employees. I think including ourselves, I think we're up to 10 now for just 2 stores, So we're just constantly have people working around the clock. Yeah,
there's also a level of prioritization and stuff too. I will definitely set aside the scratched PS2 games to go, fix something that the store actually needs, which our backlog of things to get out on the floor is always going to be enormous, and it's probably always going to be a problem. But we just do our best to kind of keep it an organized funnel that we can always pull from. And if we start to get low on something, then you go back to that funnel and find, the PS2 cords or whatever that you're low on and start pulling from there. But if you take everything in exactly the order it comes in, then we'd be very, very, very behind.
Yeah, Puerto Rican here, definitely not international. But I had a question about which console has the most durable games and which have the most fragile games, and why?
I would say the most fragile is probably...
They asked...
I think they've got the microphone now.
Oh, you're right. We're good, sorry.
We're good. The most fragile games are probably Sega CD or Sega Saturn. Disc rot is becoming kind of a pretty big thing on those. If you guys aren't familiar with disc rot, basically the bits just kind of start falling off the disc after a while. Those particular consoles weren't pressed or protected very well. If you hold them up to a light source, you'll see some little pin needles poking through, you can just see the light. That's disk rot. That means the data in that area, in that little pinhole, is gone forever. So that's a thing that is starting to be pretty real for the Sega CD and the Sega Saturn especially. Eventually it'll happen to every disc in theory, but we're very, very, very far away from most of that. As far as durability, I think like most cartridges.
Yeah, like every cartridge practically. Every once in a while the Sega Genesis ones can be more finicky than the others, I find. But with 64 stuff, like sometimes when someone's trading in like a lot of stuff, we'll like test the good ones and then kind of buy it, and then before selling it we still clean and test them, but it's just like we'll get to these later, they almost always work. So
yeah, well, a lot of times, to save time for the person who's selling stuff to us so that they don't have to wait around for us to test 100 games. For cartridge stuff, I'm pretty trusting. It's backfired a couple times, but you can generally trust cartridge stuff.
Yeah, how often do you have like customers trading systems with like spiders or cockroaches in them?
You want to tell the story about the Nintendo 64 you found recently?
Oh yeah. So I don't know what it is. I think it's our climate, because I've heard stories, especially in like California, of problems with cockroaches all the time. It's very uncommon that we find anything like that, right?
Like if something looks actually disgusting outwardly, like I will usually not take it in. Like if it looks like it's gonna have spiders in it, I'm probably like, no, it's okay.
But you still will find that like dead bugs on the inside. Like once I found a 64 recently. It was so funny and weird and gross. So I plugged in the 64 and I'm playing Twisted Edge to test it. And I don't know why I went with that one because I've never played the game before. It's a snowboarding game, and I'm playing it and I'm like, wow, 64 looks just awful. Maybe it's just this game, because everything looked like smeared and stuff. And then I start playing the game and all the snow is yellow. I'm like, is this like that like early 2090s attitude? They're like, there's like yellow snow. That's funny, right, guys? And I thought maybe that's just how it was. I'm like, no, that can't be right. Sure enough, I opened the thing up and apparently it had at minimum like 200 cockroaches inside of it, dead ones. And it was so bad that it caused like saturation on the screen. It caused like the whole thing not to run properly. But the question was how often, and pretty much very rarely. That 64 was from that guy's store that I bought, and who knows where he got that. So maybe imported from a different area.
And we did throw that one away.
Yeah.
That one we didn't want to repair that one. We for the most part don't actually trash anything. It'll be, someone will buy it for parts or something like that. But that one was like a biohazard. Yeah.
So y'all had mentioned something about disk rot. Is there any way to prevent that or prolong that from occurring?
Yeah, to prolong disk rot, you can keep things in a dry and not hot environment. It doesn't have to be cold, but a dry and cool environment. With Saturn and Sega CD stuff, you really just can't prevent it at all. It's going to happen eventually, but that'll slow it down a lot. You'll see, I would basically say never buy a Saturn or CD game that's coming from Florida or Hawaii for that reason. So, but it is, everything in the world has like a half-life, right? It deteriorates at some point, and that's just one of those that happens at a quick enough rate that we can kind of sort of see it. That's not a good answer, but it's the truth.
If you're at liberty to say, when you bought the Nintendo World Championships, how did you execute the transaction? Was it just like, here's cash, have a nice day, or?
It was a lucky coincidence because, we put it out there to everyone and got a lot of offers really quick that would have required shipping, and I don't know, shipping something that expensive is...
I think you meant also how you paid the...
Oh, I'm getting there.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, how I paid... Oh, okay. Well, let me
wrote him a check.
Yeah, and sometimes, every once in a while, you get a guy who's like, well, if this check ain't good, I'm coming back. I'm like, yeah, we've been here 15 years. Come on back anytime.
You know where to find us.
Not gonna have a problem.
Just pack up the store overnight. And leave.
Yeah. But yeah. As for selling it, though, because we had so many offers online right away. Sticking to our keep it local thing, I guess. There happened to be a guy in town for business who just bought all of our expensive games the day before, and he's just like, hey, I saw you got that, I'll take it.
So we sold it for, unfortunately can't say exactly how much because he requested that we don't say it, but we sold it for probably less than we could have gotten for it had we gone through the shipping it to someone thing. But we were leaving town 3 days later, and I did not want that to sit in the store or in our apartment or anything. So I basically was just like, the first person who can bring me that money at a reasonable amount of money, and I can just hand it off. That's good enough for me. Let's get this out of our hands.
Hey, I just had a question regarding obviously the popularity of YouTube and just the general knowledge of retro video games and obscure titles that we would really never hear about otherwise. Metal Jesus, obviously, John Riggs. I'll admit I didn't know what Sky Kid was until the video game nerd playing it with Mike. Do you see any correlation between popular YouTube channels and upticks and I guess in sales in obscure video games?
Yeah, especially for obscure games, I would say that YouTube has been a really, really big driver of that kind of stuff. You'll often even see, price fluctuations sometimes, and that's not something we'll if someone makes a YouTube video on a game we have in the store, I'm not going to go up the price on it. But the next time one comes in, it might be, if the last 5 sales or whatever, the last 15 sales have been for $30 instead of $8 like it used to be. I mean, yeah, the next one that comes in, the price is going to reflect what the market is. And that's not something that I think the YouTubers set out to try to do, but it's kind of like an aftermath of everyone going to rushing to buy the same $8 game. All of a sudden, the people who had them are like, "Whoa, I could charge more than $8," and then it eventually hits a cap, and usually it's not like a crazy cap. It's goes from $8 to $25 or whatever, but. Yeah, that definitely does happen sometimes, especially with the obscure games. It doesn't happen as much with the games that were either already popular or are just newer.
Yeah, I wish it would happen with Wave Race or something we had. It never happens with a game that you have 100 copies of. It'll happen with one that you have one of.
Yeah.
So our policy's always been, all right, let that one go for the old price.
Yeah.
Make one guy happy. One guy's going to be happy about it. But you follow the market. So everything after that, someone comes to trade that game in, we're going to pay them more and then sell it for the new established price based on that new popularity. We stubbornly avoided increasing our prices when Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
Pokemon games for a short time are going for $50 or $60, something crazy. I mean, these are one of the most popular games, right? So there was certainly supply just floating around, but everybody wanted the old ones when Pokemon Go came out, and we just very stubbornly kept them as low as we could.
Yeah, there've been a couple instances where it's something where I know that it's going to be a short-lived. Pokemon Go is probably the best example. I know it's going to be a short-lived spike because the supply is out there in mass, and so it really just shouldn't be this super high price. And in that case, we try to, I don't like to mark things.
I don't want to be seen as the store that was taking advantage.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
It's not unfair, but it does look unfair.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it all goes back to that reputation thing, and I think a lot of times we maybe overdo it sometimes. We just don't. We'll sacrifice money for our reputation pretty often.
Yeah.
All right, so I know from being in your U-District store and from Kelsey's YouTube channel that you have a penchant for some really unique items. What's the most interesting thing someone's brought in that you didn't know about beforehand?
Ooh, I didn't know about beforehand. That's a tough one. I'll start with something that I did know about, but that's pretty interesting.
We didn't know about. Okay, good.
Yeah, can you come up with anything right now?
Go
Okay. One that was just kind of cool was someone brought in a Nintendo 64 disc drive RandNet set with a lot of the games. The 64 disc drive is an add-on for the 64. It only came out in Japan. It's very, very expensive. The original pack that was kind of like the bundle. Is very hard to find complete in box, and especially with all those games, so that was pretty cool. And recently someone brought in the rarest of those games. He didn't want to sell it, and I don't blame him, but it's the golf game for the 64 DD. That one was a very late life cycle, like catalog only order or something along those lines. When it pops up, it goes for like $1,500 to $2,000. So I'd never seen one in person, which is kind of cool. But I don't know. Did you come up with anything while I was rambling?
Density Go controller for 64. So it's a train simulation game, but it's just like a whole set where you can pretend to be a conductor. You can even put your pocket watch there on the thing. It's very cute, but I'm sure a lot of people knew about it. I had no idea it existed. I thought it was cool.
We also, us being in Seattle, we also do sometimes get in some pretty interesting things like Microsoft and Nintendo and lots of other game studios, but those are the big ones, are located in the Seattle area. So we'll get some interesting like employee-only things or even prototype stuff. We joke that you can find an Xbox prototype controller like every Goodwill in Seattle. You obviously can't. It's not that it's not that common, but like several pop up a year.
That reminds me of a really obscure 360 controller that got traded in. I think it sold for like $1,000 or something. Like one of our employees bought it just as if it was any other 360 controller. Turns out it was something incredibly special. So apparently this controller was just given to employees who developed. Remember there's the old 360 blade system? It was very nice. And they switched to the kind of the version we have now. Well, apparently there was a team that just worked on that and they were given these controllers. So it's like very weird, precise group of, I don't know how many people worked on that, but there's not a lot of them out there. It's like, what the hell? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, so we get some very odd internal stuff like that sometimes that, you know, if we knew about it, it's like because there's an article on consolevariations.com or something. It's not something we see very often. So,
how nerve-wracking is it when you get something so valuable and or expensive come into your store and you have to verify it and clean it? Like, in particular, the World Championship cartridge. Because I saw the video that you posted, and it looked like you were almost like sweating trying to gently take it apart. Like, does it really, do you really just kind of start freaking out and, you know, trying to take your time to verify everything's, because it's such an expensive item?
That was probably the only one that really freaked me out. I think in general, like, you know, we'll verify $100 games, $200 games, whatever, all day without it being too much of an issue. But yeah, that's one of those where, like, if you drop it or if you do damage to it, people are going to be mad. So yeah, it can be a little nerve-wracking for some of that stuff.
Yeah, like I think I called in an employee when we got the one traded in and drove to meet Kelsey and then immediately got a drink because I was just like, this is crazy, man. I couldn't.
And you repair things too, so you've probably worked on some like somewhat nerve-wracking repairs. Like I don't know, can't think of any off the top of my head, but you've repaired some semi-expensive things too, right?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me though.
Oh, okay.
So do you have any closing comments, or do you want to take one more question?
We'll take one more question and wrap up here. Thank you, guys.
I think I had one right here, sorry.
So what's your stance on basically taking in and selling consoles and games from different regions?
Oh yeah, we do it. What's up?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, we do it. We love it. We don't really deal in the PAL stuff. It just, the compatibility gets so irritating and tough.
Also, no one in our area wants it.
If there's a market for it, we would sell it rather, but there doesn't seem to be. But the Japan stuff, Japanese stuff, all the time, I'm always seeking out especially like PS2. You know, or Saturn. Oh my God! So in America, how many Saturn games do we get? Like 200 or something? I can't remember.
I don't remember. But
not a lot.
Very many.
But in Japan, they got like 1,800 Saturn games. So there's like this massive world of games to discover that are all ridiculous. They have like games that are not a game, but just an application that's for processing your emails that comes with cute like Evangelion stickers or Sakura Taisen stickers or something. So you can send cute emails. Like I don't know, they have so much weird stuff. Games that are just photo albums. Like there's just so much to explore in the Japanese Saturn, for example. It's just a shame there's so much text, you know?
Yeah, we have a pretty good, and you know, your market will vary, but we have a pretty good market for Japanese imports in particular. especially for like Game Boy games and older games and stuff where there's not a whole lot of text in them. We have a very good receptive market for like, hey, you know, you can play this like $10 cheaper if you get the Japanese version, and a lot of people will jump on board for that. So we try to take advantage of that. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming to this panel. We'll stick around for a couple minutes if you guys want to ask us any more questions or anything, but I hope this was somewhat enlightening for you, and thank you for coming.
Thanks, guys.